Hi, hello, welcome. My name is Trina. If you're new here, welcome in. If you're not new here, welcome back. Today, I am going to finish my 2024 bullet journal. Today, you are going to help me. You are going to make me finish my 2024 bullet journal, okay? Pinkies crossed, whatever it's called. We're gonna do this today. This is my beautiful 2024 bullet journal. We only have a few days left in the year, and I'm not done yet. I have to do some wrap-up spreads. Like, I want to do some summary spreads with like full book summaries of things I've read this year, other stats I want to share about other hobbies I have, and I also have some more pages that I need to color in and do with marker. Basically, every page in my bullet journal I do in pencil first, and then I do in marker, and I'm so behind on the markering. So I have to do that, and I'm gonna do it with you today. And then maybe if we get it done, do a little flip through as well. My bullet journal style is very informal. I'm sure it has a name. I'm sure someone else has done this, because I took a lot of inspo from my sister's style, and she probably took inspo from someone else. If you know what it's called, let me know in the comments. But essentially, I'm not exactly stats tracking consistently. This has kind of turned into an art journal more than anything else. Like, I have a month header page with a little quote from my favorite book that I read that month, a little spread with starting thoughts, ending thoughts, and a to-do list, and some temperature tracking, and then just spreads on whatever else I want to have going on. But I'll show you more details later. So it's not exactly your traditional bullet journal. It's more of like an art reading regular journal, because sometimes I just journal in here. I'm still really, really proud of it, and it's really beautiful, and I'm really wanting to get this wrapped up so I can show you some of the spreads that I've done in this that I'm really, really proud of. This is my first bullet journal ever. This was the first year I tried doing it. I started it in January, and I'm wrapping up now. And for next year, I'm probably gonna do something a little bit different that doesn't require quite as much effort, because I haven't had time to keep up with this as much as I would like. But I'm still really proud of what I've done here, and I'm excited to show you my journey from the very rudimentary spreads I had in the beginning to what I've managed to figure out and do later on that I'm very proud of. So first we finish, then we flip through. Starting off here, we're at the very last pages of my bullet journal. I got myself comfortable, I have my cup of chai, and I'm ready to finish this thing up. This is my very first time ever filming myself journaling, so bear with me. For these final few pages, I'd have paper sketches kind of what I'm doing, because I can remember all of that, and that would make this time lapse so much longer if I was also doing that. For the sort of introductory end page to this final section of my bullet journal, I tried to experiment with some classic bullet journal scrapbooking style with washi tape and stickers. This is not my usual style for journaling, but I am trying to get better at it, because this is what I'm hoping to use for my travel journal this year. So bear with me if this looks so haphazard. This spread was sort of an all-in-one spread for everything from the year, everything I learned in the year. I divided it into two sections, just overall general end-of-year thoughts, and end of journal thoughts. That's why it says end of year on the top in blue for the blue page, and end of journal on the bottom in pink for the pinker page. For my sort of end of year summary, I did like a little symbolic happiness chart as like the idea of tracking getting happier each year. I also drew a mirror of Erised, which is like the mirror of desire from Harry Potter. We were rewatching Harry Potter over Christmas, and it had me thinking about a mirror that shows your dreams and your future in it and your greatest desires. So this is kind of a point where I could add in my greatest desires going forward for the next year, taking what I learned in this past year, blah, 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 all that symbolism sort of stuff. And I wrote down just some like my favorite things about 2024 that I achieved. For the end of journal content, this is my very first year bullet journaling, or any sort of journaling really other than like childhood journaling. So I had a couple of takeaways. Next year I'm not going to be doing this journal because it took a lot of time and effort, although I love how it turned out, and I definitely gotten better at art because of it. It's definitely way more work than I can currently manage. I'm going to be trying to get more into sticker style, using stickers more instead of drawings, things that take a little bit less time, use less energy, all of that. And I also just recorded my most useful insights and my least useful insights from journaling in the year. And I have a little graphic in the middle that shows my journal journey continuing on to 2025. And then we had a quick gate crash from my cat, who was very intrigued on getting in on the bullet journaling and couldn't understand why there was a giant tripod set up over the table. Yeah, but all in all, I really love how this spread ended up turning out. It was kind of exactly as I pictured, a little bit muted colors, a little bit chill, some journaling thoughts for the most part, but still displayed in like a pretty way. I like how the pink relative to the pink title and the blue relative to the blue title turned out, even though it kind of ended up looking like a gender reveal unintentionally, but we're gonna ignore that. The concept behind this next spread was sort of a timeline of my entire 2024. I took a bunch of trips in 2024, and I guess I didn't really realize how many there were and how consistent they were until I started thinking about the idea of a timeline to sort of document all of those trips that I took. I have a little bit blurred out. That's going to come up a couple of times in these sections just because there's some personal information on these journals. Nothing like it's super important, but just like you don't need to stare at it during a time lapse. For the timeline, I tried to show like the seasons passing with like little sketch drawings. They were kind of silly. I just freehanded them with pen, which was always risky because I'm not very much of an artist. But I still like how it turned out. It still turned out pretty fun. Even though it took me so long to do. Cycling from snow to flowers to the leaves falling back to snow. And then for the timeline itself, I tried to color match the sections going into each color of the months that I used. I wanted this to be a really colorful and bright page, and I just got these colorful pens for Christmas, so I was really going a ham with those, and I love how it turned out. Overall, in the end, looking at it, I traveled so much in 2024. I did so much in 2024, and it's a really nice way for me to see that all laid out and see it all visualized. And it makes me even more proud of everything I managed to do this year and fit in. Even though it felt like a pretty sedentary year, it definitely was not in hindsight. This next part we can do super fast. This is kind of just a summary of a bunch of different workout trackers I did throughout the year. I tracked a bunch of stats for myself through a couple of different workout spreads on the months where I was trying to focus on like walking more and running more. So I kind of wanted to do a big summary of that. For the charts, this top chart and the bottom chart, I basically just copied from my Fitbit app on my phone and replicated it. But I still like having the visual and seeing how much I walked because there was a lot. And then for the middle visual, I just did like a track kind of drawing where I pointed to both the starting line and finish line with how far I was running in the beginning and how far I ended up running by the end of the year. I managed to run 4 miles by the end of the year, which was way beyond my personal goal, so I was really, really happy with that. I like how this spread turned out with the visualizations. I think it's a good way to sort of summarize what I managed to achieve for my personal health reasons this year, but I won't talk about it for too long because the next spread is the really important one. It is the reading recap spread. I wanted to do one sort of summary page for all my reading stats. I definitely could have made it a full spread, but I was so excited to get into my reading journal for this year that I thought it was unnecessary for me to do a giant reading recap. So I just focused on making a little bar chart for all of my star ratings. As you can see, the majority of the books I read were 4 and 5 stars, which is probably why I read so much, because there were so many good books. In total, I read 157 books. I thought it was 163, but Goodreads doesn't know how to count. And I also wrote down how many series I completed and how many series I started, trying to keep the math pretty even there. And I didn't do too bad. I started 23 series and I finished 25. So, you know, like at least I wasn't going negative. I have a little graph on the bottom for all the different genres I was reading, color coding, a little bar graph of the genres. As should be pretty obvious, the majority of what I read was fantasy and sci-fi and romance. Those are the three big categories. But there is a little healthy section of nonfiction, general fiction, and memoir as well. And then at the top, I have a little pie chart for the mediums that I was reading in, which were primarily books, Kindle, and audiobooks. I definitely read more physical books near the end of the year. I started really getting into book buying and reading, which is not a good thing for my wallet. I read a significant number of audiobooks, and I was pretty proud of that too. It goes hand in hand with my walking charts, because I listen to audiobooks while I'm out walking. And then I also listed out all of my favorite books of the year that I wrote, just some of the top ones. Some of these were in my other videos, some of them weren't, but the ones that really stood out for me on an emotional level and that I still think about, it's nice just to have them listed down there overall. These next two pages are so random for this channel, but I am actually a really big fan of watching Twitch and watching YouTube. That's a lot of what I play in the background while I'm doing other things. So I thought it would be cute for a little Twitch recap to replicate the actual like Twitch recap that they send us at the end of the year. So I took a screenshot of that and I basically copied it over with like the fonts, and I tried to replicate the little like channel logos as best I could. I don't have a time lapse of me coloring in that entire section because I needed to use my phone to color reference for that. So, and I film on my phone, so I had to take my phone down for that part. But I'll show you the end result once I finish coloring in that bottom part, because I think it turned out so well, and it looks just like the recap that Twitch sends out, only just the colored pencil version. So I was really happy with it. Please ignore the number of total watched hours, okay? We're just gonna walk right past that. And then over here I have a little media recap page. I actually didn't think I'd watched that many shows and movies this year, but I was kind of lying to myself. I managed to come up with a good little list of shows that I'd watched, and I decided to use this sort of retro theme for the technology for it. So I did like an old gaming console and an old Mac computer and an old camcorder. The camcorder up there is where I recorded just all of the YouTubers I watched, with the ones I've been watching for a long period of time and the new ones that I started watching this year. For the gaming console, I just put all the video games I played this year. I actually played more than I expected. I tried quite a few video games. I got a Switch last year, so that has definitely been inspiring me to play more games than I had previously. And then on top of the old Mac computer, I had a little bubble with all the new shows I watched this year. I didn't keep very good track of them. This is not all the shows I watched this year, but you know what? If I couldn't remember them, then they don't deserve to be on the list. And that is my philosophy with journaling. But yeah, those were all of my spreads I did for end of year. On to the flip through. Okay, so I've officially finished my 2024 bullet journal. Woo! I have it in this like cloth cover thing. I don't think I showed it earlier. The notebook is just inside of it like this. It's just a dot grid mini. Thick pages, simple, because I knew I wanted to get this kind of like portfolio that I could put future notebooks in and then just keep the slim thing. It is kind of chunky because I've added a ton of pages. When I ran out of pages in this, I got annoyed by the idea of having some of the pages in a different journal other than this one. So I decided to rip out the pages bit by bit. You can see this in the ending bit, but and then like tuck them back in by cutting it. It's actually not super visible, which I'm kind of proud of, but spent a lot of time doing that to make sure I would have all the pages in this, but it's made it a little stuffed. But it goes inside this folio where I keep some of my stickers and other things that I use. And this journal is my first ever journal. So you will see a huge change in like my art choices and designs. Starting just with this cover page, which is relatively simple and cute, and I signed it. Also worth mentioning that there will be some entries in here that I won't really want to share because they'll be personal and they'll share personal information about where I am and where I live and stuff like that. So I'll be skipping over a lot of it, but I did want to just show how my journaling style changed and how I ended up getting really inspired to start a reading journal in 2025 from the reading spreads that I did in this book that I will show you. And then also on this very first page, you can see I tried to do pen directly, everything smeared, things weren't overlapping the way I wanted it to. The drawings are like very simple, very me in the beginning of the year. I was still trying to figure out what I wanted to do with the journal, how I wanted to use it. This page I'm very proud of. I did it a little bit later into the year. I finished it, which is why I'm a little bit more proud of it. But I meant to kind of use it throughout the year, but I didn't end up doing that. I made this back when I thought this was still gonna be like a bullet style journal, and which it ended up becoming more of a journal style journal, just like an art journal and all kinds of types of journal. But I made this so I could actually use it for certain things. Didn't end up doing that, but I still really like how it turned out and all the little dates. Don't know what I would have used it for because you can't write anything on it, but I still think it looks good, and I can definitely see myself using this in the future as like a reading style journal where I track which books I read on which days. This was going to be a manifestation spread where I wrote out things I wanted to manifest in the year. I ended up not really wanting to do that, and I ended up just kind of using it for stickers that I thought might manifest my year. But yeah, overall, that's how this spread begins. And then I just have a little goal tracker where I set out all my larger goals, and I kind of added some throughout the year as they became relevant. And I left the categories very like kind to myself, kind of, where red means I just didn't work on it that month, and blue means I attempted it, and green means I succeeded. A lot more green than I thought there might be, so I'm very proud of that. And the biggest chunk of red is in professional development, because I kept the same job for the entire year. From this goal tracking page, we start my monthly spreads. For every single month, I followed a pretty similar format, where I put my favorite quote from usually my favorite book of the month, but sometimes if a quote really hit, even if the book wasn't my favorite, I still included it. In this first month, I did a quote from Tanar, the main character of Tahanu by Ursula K. Le Guin, where she says, "Is it different then for men and women? It seems to me we make up most of the differences and then complain about them." And I did a little snowflake motif, very simplistic. My art style definitely changes as the journal goes on. And then this is how most of my spreads looked throughout the year. I had a starting thoughts section where I talked about things coming up. I have an ending thoughts section where I sort of reflect on everything that was on my to-do list and everything I did during the month and things that happened. They're going to be mostly blurred out because they're talking about like personal details about my life. And a lot of it kind of ends up being like mental health reflection. So that's how the journaling aspect of it sort of comes in. I left the thermometers in, which is based on the locations I was in for each week of the year. Started out being in San Jose, then I went back to DC for 2 weeks, and it snowed on that week, which was very nice. And I have a little joy bar where theoretically I would fill it in every time I had a really good day. I didn't really use my bullet journal often enough to fill it in, so don't worry. I didn't just have 3 good days in January. I had a little bit more than that, but I didn't end up filling it in a ton. And I have this calendar where I would end up just coloring in lightly with colored pencil if a day became significant to me. In the beginning of the year, I used a pretty simplistic style of bullet journaling. I have this hobby tracker where I talked a little bit about playing Cult of the Lamb in the beginning of the year, which was my favorite game starting off. And I did play a little bit of Zelda, which is why there's a cork there. And just these assorted stickers and my hopes for the hobbies in the next month. This was my very first reading spread for the year. I say spread, it's a single page, but it was my very first reading page for the year, where I talked about highs and lows. I rated what I thought that month rated. It was not a very good month. It was only a 2-star reading month because I didn't hit my monthly goal. I only read 6 books here, but I did include my in-progress books just to give myself the credit and to have more to put on the bookshelf. This is also where I tracked which genres I was reading and which mediums I was reading books in, which I did every month and really helped me with my wrap-up spreads at the end of the year, and the average rating I gave books. I may not have read that many, but they were very good books. I will give it that. And in January, I read The Art Thief, Uprooted, The King's Delight, Tahanu, Fingersmith, and Gideon the Ninth. So Gideon the Ninth was especially a highlight, as I mentioned in my highs. Other pages here is just a reflection page that I'll blur out. I have a January menu where I talk about the different foods I ate that month. I didn't do this every month of the year, but some of the months, if I felt like I was trying new recipes and trying new foods, then I would make a little menu page with a different like menu style motif. Here, the sections were breakfast foods that I would eat a lot. I still eat that. Don't eat that as much anymore. And the main recipes I made and the recipes that didn't work out so well, the recipes I did not enjoy and I probably won't make again. This is largely because I use HelloFresh, so I get a lot of different recipes all the time, and some of them work out and some of them do not. This is also in the beginning of me trying to draw more in this journal. It definitely was a slow progress, but I used mostly tracing for these. So I found a picture of spaghetti online and I traced it through the paper. And I found that I've gotten a lot better at making actual art through tracing this year, just like, because it's not actual, I'm not calling this art, it's just tracing so that I can make a bullet journal spread, you know? And then I have a spread for Premier League because me and my sister are really into the Premier League and those interests there. And then I have a little self-care salon style where I have a little salon chair and I fill up my favorite chai cup that I use for chai at home with all the things I did for self-care in January. But that was essentially it. I'm not going to give everything as much detail as I did in January, but that was my very first month ever of journaling. And I really enjoyed how I did with this. I really enjoyed the spreads and how I set them up, but it felt like I've definitely grown a lot since this point, and I like looking back on it and seeing how much I've grown. For February, we have a quote from Persuasion by Jane Austen, the iconic Captain Wentworth speech. Love it. We have the regular spread. We have workout tracking. I didn't end up completing it because I ended up traveling unexpectedly at the end of February and I couldn't work out as much as I wanted to, but I'd already made the spread. That's why it's kind of light. My February bookshelf, you can tell I was not feeling bullet journaling this month because I left this page blank, but we have my February bookshelf where it was a very slow reading month. I only read 3 books, but I had 4 in progress. I read 2 fantasies, 1 classic. I read Persuasion by Jane Austen, The Bear and the Nightingale, and Spinning Silver. So all kind of wintry books because I was in a snowy place in February. I visited Norway and Sweden. So I drew a little map of Norway and Sweden and the places I went to while I was there with my family. And then I made a special winter book recap about wintry books that I read on this trip while I was in the snow, because we got stuck in a blizzard and I had 3 wintry books with me to read and they were very, very atmospheric and very nice. So I really enjoyed writing them all out and trying to imitate what the covers look like of these books. I'm not very good at art even now, but I've gotten slightly better since the year. For my March spread, I drew a little cherry blossom in DC in March. It used to be April, but global warming, so now we get cherry blossoms in March, which is an iconic DC staple. So I tried to draw a few, and I was pretty proud how those turned out. I don't know how well they'll show up on camera because they were the faint colored pencil, but I really like them. And I have a quote from Vern in Sorrowland. Then in March, I also watched a lot of Twitch and YouTube. I got especially into watching YouTube this month and watched some new people, continued with some regular ones that I'd watched before, watched some new streamers. There was also a huge event for a video game that I love to watch professional play of called Valorant, and I did a little ranking of the how it went, and it was a really, really fun event, this especially because a team that I was a fan of for years actually did really good this year for the first time in ages, which was fun. And I included a little meme about a character Clove from the video game that I love. Then I have a writing spread and a reading spread for March. I got really back into writing in March. I was writing like just a lot for fun. I haven't published anything. I'm not published and I'm not even a particularly good writer, but it is a great outlet for me. And I put it in the sort of style of a how-to guide. This is my reading spread for March, my bookshelf spread as I call all of them. This month I just did a little bookshelf, but I was actually really proud of myself because after 2 reading slump months, I read 9 books, hitting my monthly goal of 8 books, and 5 of them were 5-star books, as I wear here. I read 6 books, 3 audiobooks, and 1 book on my Kindle. So I actually got through a lot of my physical TBR too, which is always nice. And my average rating was 4.4. So I like keeping those stats. I guess I can also tell you the books I read, but it was The Fox Wife, Tales from Earthsea, the 5th Earthsea cycle book, Heartless Hunter, They Called Us Exceptional and Other Lies That Raised Us, Sorrowland, Word Slut, An Ember in the Ashes, The Other Wind, the final book in the Earthsea books, Binti, and A Fate Inked in Blood. For April, I did some vines. I started getting more comfortable with a little bit more drawing, but still relatively simplistic. Although I like how these leaves turned out. I thought they were fun. And I included a quote from Entangled Life, which was my favorite nonfiction book of the year. Love this book. Love this quote specifically. So, I have my regular monthly spread. I have workout tracking where I track the different runs I got in the beginning of the year. It's so fun to see this now, especially if you saw my year-end tracker. By the end of the year, I was able to run 4 miles. So this has been a big goal of mine this year, to get back into running. So here I'm talking about running a half mile and having some back pain and dealing with that as a result. And the last workout of that month, I injured myself. So that's put a slight dent in my goal, but I was still working on it. And I also tracked all my steps for the month and drew a little salad thing that I pretty much traced, I think, if I remember correctly, but I still love how it turned out. And then I had a page about my favorite park in DC where I love to sit and read. So I drew out the street map of that park and sort of highlighted it, drew a little picnic basket, drew a pretzel I would get from the local pretzel bakery. It was a favorite place. I miss it a lot. And then this is my April bookshelf. I sort of placed books on this bookshelf based on how I ranked them. So my favorite books on the top, kind of fine books here, meh books here, and books I really didn't like here. It wasn't a great reading month. I think that's why I gave it 4 stars. Even though I crushed my reading goal for the month, I read 16 books, I think. Yeah, 16 books. A lot of them were quite bad. My average rating was 3.5 stars, which is very low considering all my other average ratings so far were over 4. So I just chronicled that a little bit. I have another mental health spread that I won't show on here, but I was really proud of this little dial drawing I did. So I love how that turned out and I wanted to show that. And then my April menu, you can see I'm actually getting really into drawing these. I drew these little soup dumplings from this place we went to in San Jose, and tofu pad thai, burrata from Italy, taro tea, iced chai from all of my favorite foods. And I really love how the little drawings come out and how the color scheme of the green came out as well. Then in May, I was finally starting to come to my own. I wanted to do a little bit more complicated drawing, so I did a little bit more detailed sunflower. I don't like that I ended up using a marker here, not liking it, and then using colored pencil here. I don't know why I could have just practiced this on another page and decided before I did it here, but that's how things go when you're doing your first ever bullet journal. You learn a lot. In May, I have another workout tracker that I wasn't able to keep up with because I got injured. So as you can see, I have week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4 filled out, and then nothing else. And then I was really proud of this injury page. I drew out little body charts to mark where my pain moved to in my back injury for the 4 weeks. It was a really long recovery period for this injury. Tracking it made me track my recovery a little bit better. Then I was trying something new in May. I wanted to try the commonplace book that I've seen a lot of people in journaling circles talk about, a commonplace book where you just write down quotes that really stuck by you. There were several quotes that I saw on Twitter, TV, books that I read that really stuck with me, so I wanted to record them somewhere. So I was just practicing whether or not I would like the style of a commonplace book. I still haven't committed to one, but maybe in the future I might get back to that. And then here's my May bookshelf. I really love how this one turned out. I was getting kind of sick of the regular square bookshelves that I'd been doing, so I tried a little shelf design that I really like how it looked, and I love my little potted plant that I drew. And I read a ton of books this month. I read 21 books. This was my biggest reading month of the year, my first 5-star reading month that I gave myself. And a lot of the books were really good. We had over a 4-star average rating for the books I read. So I was really, really happy with that. Some of the books on this shelf, they're all sideways so I can turn it this way, but some of the books on this shelf ended up becoming my absolute favorites of the year. For example, Sex and the Cherry, Carmilla was a favorite. I read the entire Naomi Novik, A Deadly Education, The Last Graduate, the Golden Enclave series that I loved. I read Hera the Ninth, some iconic books on this list. And then we have another Premier League spread just to update because the Premier League ended in May. I got these little stickers off of Redbubble from a friend. So I included them on the spread. And the final ranking, I beat my sister in our Fantasy Premier League, which is all I'm ever aiming to do. So I was very proud of that. And then I got really, really into Hollow Knight in May. I was really injured and lying in bed all day, like I said. So I was just absolutely grinding out Hollow Knight on my Switch, and really, really enjoyed it. I still haven't finished the game. I don't know, can you finish Hollow Knight? I haven't found the end yet. I'm still working on it, but I've gotten pretty deep, to be fair. I think I've unlocked all the areas. I just don't know quite what to do with them yet, but I'll get back to that at some point. Then in June, I was really, really proud of how my June pages turned out. I think they're gorgeous. Starting off with this cloud picture, and a quote from Know My Name by Chanel Miller, which was one of my favorite books of the year, my favorite memoir of the year. A really, really beautiful quote. You have to hold out to see how your life unfolds, because it is most likely beyond what you can imagine. It is not a question of if you will survive this, but what beautiful things await you when you do. Love that. And then in June, the reason why I did the little airplane motif is because I went on a big Euro trip in June where I went to Ireland and Scotland and Sweden. Starting off, I made a little Ireland page, and I also marked the travel pages with this line up top in the airplane. I drew St. Patrick's Cathedral, which is near where we were staying in Ireland, and was absolutely stunning. I got really into like cathedral architecture and stained glass while I was there on this trip, and it was gorgeous, and a little Guinness, of course. And some highlights. And then I have this little Scotland spread. We stayed in both Glasgow and Edinburgh, and we explored the Highlands a little bit. And I got 2 wonderful sticker sets while I was there, so I wanted to include some of the Scottish stickers that I brought back with me. So I love how these 2 pages turned out, and I love especially how this drawing of St. Patrick's Cathedral turned out. Then, on one of my favorite pages of the year, we went to the Eras Tour in Edinburgh while we were there. It was the main reason why we planned the trip around that. So I decided to do a page in the style of Taylor Swift's Eras Tour poster with all the different era colors. But instead of Taylor in the middle, I did the Edinburgh Castle, which you'll know is up on a cliff when you come to the city. And when you come into the city, you come from this angle where it really stands out over the whole city when you take the bus from the airport. And I wanted to use that original view that I got for the middle of the poster. So I'm really, really happy with how that turned out. I loved that. And then my last page is just a simple Sweden page with a sailboat and a dock, just talking about the things we did while we were there. My last 2 pages for June, I did a trip haul where I just wrote down everything I bought while I was there. It's a bit excessive. Don't look too closely on this. These are all the books I bought, which is especially excessive, and some of them I haven't even read yet, so need to work on that. But even so, some of them were really old books. I bought this 1800s copy of Northern Jarabi that I am obsessed with, that I still have on my shelf and I love. And then I have my June bookshelf. I decided to design my June bookshelf based on my favorite bookstore in DC, this used bookstore called Capitol Hill Books. But instead of Capitol Hill Books, I wrote June bookshelf. And in the front, I have the books I read. There weren't a ton, I was traveling, but I still met my reading goal, which I was very proud of. Audiobooks and Kindle books while I was traveling saved the day. And I loved all the books I read this month. I read Nona the Ninth, and I read Angels Before Man, which was also a highlight. A lot of great books here. And I read the first Raven Boys book, starting a journey I was not expecting to start this year. It was really good. Then for July, I did a simple sun motif. It was a very hot month, and I included a quote from Sense and Sensibility. Actually, all 3 months where I read Jane Austen books this year have quotes from there in here. I have a steps counter and a training tracker page. As I mentioned, I got really into my running era this year, and I really started improving my distances and how far I was able to run. I went from being able to run 0.5 a couple of months back to 2.25 this month, and I have these little sketches of a person stretching that I really enjoyed. And then I have my July bookshelf spread. This was inspired by my bookshelf setup at my old apartment, which had this under window bookshelf that I loved, so I sort of designed that half of it. It's come up on my channel a few times, but I really miss that now. And I read so many books this month, so I wanted to talk about all of them in some depth. I read, how many books is this? 18 books? I read 18 books. They weren't all winners. I had a lower than average rating, but I did read all of the Raven Cycle main books and loved them, so that was amazing. I read The Goblin Emperor, which is like one of my favorite book of the year, potentially, and Sense and Sensibility, which I also loved, so lots of highlights for sure. Then I was counting down to my move in December. what I was doing. I didn't really know what I was doing, just wanted to plan it out a little bit. This is kind of bullet journal style. Even though I didn't end up using the checkboxes or really using the page, it was more like a reflection page. And then I have my July menu where I sort of did it in the style of like a diner menu with all of the pictures of the things I made on the side, which I was really proud of. I love how these turned out, especially the little green tea picture because I loved, and all the foods I bought that month. I ate out a lot, so we're not gonna talk about that. Then for August, I did a silly little banana motif for August. I don't know why. I thought it matched the month and I couldn't really think of anything else that hadn't already been done. I don't really know what else people do for like summer month motifs. I was thinking maybe an ice cream, but in the end I like how the banana turned out and I thought it was silly. And I have a quote from Red Sister, which is one of my favorite sci-fi books of the year and really loved. So for August, I have another steps tracker, which I colored in for red under 10,000, orange was 10,000 to 15,000, and green was 15,000 plus steps, which I was really happy with, focusing on walking a lot. And then this is my bookshelf for August. After all the complicated bookshelves I've been doing for the summer in May, June, and July, I wanted to do something, go back to my roots, something simple, just a regular old bookshelf. And I really like how it turned out. I like having all the saga volumes that I've read so far next to each other. This is the last month that hasn't been chronicled on my channel. So if you want to see the books that I read here, there are quite a few that I loved. And I had a really good reading month with a 4.33 average. Like I said, lots of 5-star books. So I rated the month overall as a 5-star reading month, which I loved. Then I did a lot of at-home activities when I was in DC that month. I went to a lot of places. It was beautiful weather, so I walked a lot. I walked to the National Gallery of Art, the Asian Art Gallery, the National Zoo, and I wanted to do a little review on each of them, including one of my favorite paintings from the National Gallery of Art and like a little vase sort of motif. And I was really proud of how these drawings went out and how I was able to imitate this painting really well. It's obviously not perfect, but for my skill level, I was pretty proud of this. And then we had some summer wrap-up pages because August is the last month of summer. I have a little retrospective page about the things I did in the summer. And then I have a page specifically about the sports of the summer. The Euro Cup happened this summer. The Olympics happened this summer. Premier League started up again in August. So I had a lot to talk about. Then we go on to September, where I did this leaf pattern that I was really, really happy with how this turned out. And I included a quote from Piranesi, which was my favorite book of September. Still one of my favorite books. I can't believe I haven't talked about this more. I love Piranesi. I think about it all the time. Then my sister visited DC and visited me in that month, so I was really happy with that, and we did a bunch of things that I tracked. And then I have my September bookshelf. I sort of did it in this sideways style because there were fewer of them, and I also wanted to do something unique, so I have the title on the side. But this was also a great month. With my sister visiting, I read a little bit less, but a lot of the books were really, really great, including Piranesi, The Kite Runner, Howl's Moving Castle. I talk about a lot of these books in my September wrap-up, but I still like how this little simplistic spread turned out. I went on a little trip to Virginia Beach where there was a lightning storm while we were there, which explains this theme. And then I have a little section here with all the activities I did that month, including the stamp museum, which is why there are these stamps on here. And then for my month 9 menu, I kind of did it in the style of a recipe book where I have like recipes for the things I'm making and how I made them and the different drinks I got that month and tried out. Going into October, I really started getting into my arts and crafts style then. I started getting a lot better at art and I was really happy with myself. I have a quote from Catherine in Northanger Abbey down here. I have another workout tracker and health tracker and steps tracker. Here I wrote in the actual count of steps. They weren't always perfect days, but I had some good days for steps in between. And with the preparation for my move in November, I kind of did some bullet journaling and planning for that, and I wanted to use this sticker really badly that I'd found, so I included that as well. And then this spread I'm so proud of. I think one of my favorites of the year for sure. I have my starting booktube spread, because October is when I started my booktube, and my October reading spread, including the number of subscribers I had when I first started, obviously, just like me and my sister and my friends, the lessons I picked up from the first few videos, and like my hopes and dreams going forward. And then for my October bookshelf, I wanted to use the motif of these moving boxes that I use to store my books. I take very good care of them. They're in very nice plastic boxes. So I wanted to include that somehow in the design. So I did this kind of like realism drawing of the boxes and then wrote in the names of all the books like stacked on top of each other. I don't know how well that shows up on this camera, but I love it. And I was really proud of how this turned out and that it looks just like the boxes I used and it looks like my real books, which I miss dearly, and they're still in these boxes and I love them and I miss them. And then we have this last spread for October. I did a New York trip in October. So where I went to go see Romeo and Juliet on Broadway. So I wanted to do this in the playbill style, which is why this looks like this. It's like the playbill font and the playbill yellow and all the different activities I did. And then this was also my last month living in DC. So I included a bunch of the activities I went to while I was in DC, including the Hirshhorn and Rubel galleries, which is like this circular style museum, the National Cathedral, Old Town Alexandria, which has this little streetcar running through it. Definitely go there in the fall. Beautiful. And then I just did a silly little haunted castle for Halloween night, which I thought matched the vibe of the other pictures well. Getting to the end of the month, into November, I have a quote from Gideon the Ninth. Technically, this is a reread in November, but it was the best quote of the month. I couldn't not put that quote in. It was the best quote. Then I have a Goodbye to DC journal that I won't include a lot of, but I can just show I did some little DC sketches. And my favorite places to go to in DC. And then I have my moving page where I have my moving boxes drawn out and my truck and a little bit journal section again. I have a little hobbies page, which I'm keeping up with my hobbies as I was moving, what I was doing to sort of cope with the move. I still need to do a little drawing here of two of my favorite streamers, but I'll get to that eventually, probably, when I'm in the mood to do art. And then here's my bookshelf for November. Again, I tried to do this little corner shelf style. I wanted to add a little like book sitting face down the way I used to mistreat my books when I was a kid because I thought that was fun. It wasn't the greatest reading month ever because I was really busy and stressed, but I did read a lot of great books, which I have all talked about in this channel, so I'll go through it relatively quickly, but I do like how the design turned out. And then going into December, I have this quote from one of my favorite characters in fiction ever, from Ronan from the Ravenverse books. And I included the little bell from the Polar Express movies. After this one, we're going to skip a couple of spreads because I sort of talk about stuff at the place that I'm currently staying, so I don't want to give too much away. But I do have this reading spread that I love how it turned out. I wrote up my little winter TBR for myself with little categories of books I'm planning on reading and goals for my winter reading. This isn't just for December, this is for January and February, so I haven't achieved a lot of this, okay? But I am going to get to it. With all these snowflakes on the side, that I really love how those turned out as well. And then for my December bookshelf, I decided to do a design of a bunch of books under a Christmas tree, which I love how they look, under this Christmas tree with the title, and all the books tied, some of them tied together as like presents. Not the greatest reading month in December either, but there were some really, really good highlights that were sort of keeping me from getting into a reading slump, which I am currently in, but we won't talk about that on this video. And then the next page is a Christmas spread. I'm going to block out a bunch of stuff that sort of talks about my family and Christmas, but I just loved the design of the baubles that I did on the side and the Danish Juliade design and advent calendar. And I love how this little candle drawing turned out and everything, so I was really happy with this overall. And then we get to the pages that you saw me finish up today, my ending spread pages, where I did some summaries. I talked about most of this earlier, but I'll flip through it again. Oh, this is my first time flipping through since I did them, and I really love how this all turned out. Oh, this makes me so happy. Oh, this looks... Okay. This looks perfect. It's been such a journey for me. Doing this journal, you can just see how my art style has changed. I'm just thinking about this again. Like this style of journaling and how much text I have on the page versus like a spread I would do back in February. There's a good example. Like something like this, or maybe that's not fair to myself, but yeah, my spreads used to be very, very bare bones, and I feel like I've really grown into journaling, and I've discovered a lot of things that work for me, as I mentioned before with my end of year journal, so I'm really, really happy with that. But that is my flip through, and thank you so much for watching. I will now send it over to my ending thoughts for the video. Hello, we're back. I hope you enjoyed that segment of finishing my 2024 bullet journal and the somewhat of a flip through on the spreads that I could share. I know I couldn't share everything because there's a lot of like personal information in here, and as open on the internet as I am, I probably should have some limits set. But overall, if you have any tips and tricks for bullet journaling or reading journaling or any kind of journaling, please feel free to share them in the comments. As you could probably tell, I'm very new, but I had a lot of fun doing this, and I'd love to hear from more experts, or even not just experts, but things you've picked up or seen that you wanted to share. I'm really proud of what I did here, so that's why I wanted to make a video commemorating it, even though this is a booktube channel, because it made me really happy, and it is added context to my reading journal that I'm going to be starting in 2025. So stay tuned for that. Please comment, subscribe, like, whatever you want to do. But I will see you in the next one. Thanks. Bye.